What's up, guys? Welcome back. Another episode of the Average Money Podcast. I got to say a little selfishly, I am excited about today's episode. One of my favorite investing vehicles, the Roth IRA. JJ and I are going to break down the Roth IRA, why it is probably one of the best investment vehicles that you can have, whether you're a beginner or a veteran investor. We're going to talk about all the things you may know or you may not know, and why 2021 might be the year that you should definitely consider a Roth IRA if you have not in the past. If you are new to this podcast, my name is Brad Finn. I am joined by Mr. Daily YouTube Uploader, JJ Buckner. What is up, JJ?
I'm grinding, bud. I'm grinding. I got to fix that. I got to cater that algorithm.
Oh, dude, you are just pumping out YouTube videos on a regular basis. I said to you yesterday, I'm slightly jealous of your views, but I do not want to be putting in the work that you're putting in right now. Like I look behind you here. You got mics hanging from the ceiling. You got lights, cameras, action. It's crazy over there in the Buckner household.
Dude, you got to cater that. You got to massage that algorithm every now and then, and hopefully for a win. And right now I'm going to ride the highs for it is. That's lasting right now because I know there'll be lows right around the corner. But it's exciting times, dude, when your YouTube channel's popping. I'm not going to lie. Makes you sleep a little better at night, and it makes you get more excited to get up and film that video.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. It's regardless of the work, it's better than working for the man.
You're damn right about that, bud. I went to Dewdrop, the local little restaurant, bar and grill right down the street for lunch. I got to have me a beer, which is something I couldn't do at a day job. So let's go, baby.
Did you take the lawnmower down there or the side-by-side?
No, we took the car down today. It's freezing right now.
Oh,
freezing and raining.
I forgot it's winter there. Yeah. So the Roth IRA, I mean, I think this is one thing that we were speaking about before, that we are pretty much 100% in line with its benefit and how wonderful it is. Maybe we skew away from how to invest in it, but we both agree that even though we have YouTube channels that talk about stocks and growth portfolios and things like that, behind the scenes, we are both, really focused on that Roth IRA and its importance. And we really wanted to drive home the fact that you got to be at least thinking, you have to give me a really, really solid reason why you won't consider the Roth IRA.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a personal finance nerd, this is like one of your favorite episodes to listen to, because not only are we going to pinpoint some good details about a Roth IRA that some of you may not know about or haven't heard before, and we're also just going to talk about the reasons why this is really, honestly, the best investment vehicle someone could make for 2021. There's so many pluses, kind of like what Brad said. It'd be really hard for someone to somehow debate me on why I shouldn't invest inside my Roth IRA. I don't know. It'd be a tough one, I'll say that.
The first place we can kind of start, and the number one question I get about it, because people try and debate it and they're like, okay, Brad, all right, you win. You win, Roth IRA. Where does it align in your investing philosophy? Is it something that you try and max out, or are you maxing certain things out beforehand? Is it the extra money? We'll talk about, there is limits. And I think one thing that needs to be a concern, and I'll just tell my viewpoint first. I try and max it out as fast as possible. And some things along the lines with those max, it's going to change the max every single year, and that's fine. As of the time of this recording, it's $6,000 a year. But I think I used to get myself caught in this position where if I can't max it, then it's not worth using. And I know now, like with my kids, and we'll talk about kids, but even a little bit of money, even if it's not the max, that can still have major benefits. And for me now, I've gotten to the point where I can max mine first day of the year, but it's the first thing that I still do. And that's regardless of whether I'm maxing my 401ks, 403bs, brokerage accounts. It's kind of like my top priority first. And I can explain the reasons why, but how do you feel about it? Is it something that you lump sum over time? Are you trying to max it as fast as possible? What are you trying to do?
I got two viewpoints for this. I have the employed version, JJ, and I have the self-employed version of JJ, which is the most recent. So first, being employed, the Roth IRA was the first investment I was maxing out, next to maxing out if I got a match from a company. If I got a match from a company, I'm for sure putting in that whatever that percentage is, whatever the minimum amount is to get that max or to get the match.
Because that's free money.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why you got to take full advantage of free money. But next to that, Roth IRA is number one on my list. I'm maxing out my Roth IRA first. Now, moving towards the self-employed JJ version, I still max out my Roth being first, but the investment that's, I would say, right in line with that for another tax benefit, which we'll get more into detail in a second, but it's my SEP IRA. Okay. Just to help out with some of those, some of the gross income that I can use as like a write-off. My amount that I put in from the company to my SEP, that's a write-off for me. So now that's where it kind of comes hand in hand with the Roth and SEP. But on a general version, the Roth IRA is my number one investment I'm maxing out very first.
And you mentioned for tax purposes, and this is not really going to be an episode about all the other retirement and ways to invest, but essentially we have tax advantage retirement accounts, and we have ones like your 401k and your 403b, which is tax deferred. Not tax-free, tax deferred. You're not going to pay taxes on them now. You're going to pay taxes on them later. The Roth IRA is a different type of tax advantage account. Now, essentially, the long and short of that is you are going to make money. You are going to get taxed on that money, and then you are going to collect money from your job. You invest into this Roth IRA with post-tax dollars, and how it's tax advantaged is that over time, over the course of your lifetime, any growth, any dividends, all of that is going to grow tax-free. That's the tax advantage thing. This is going to take compound interest and dividends. I know you wanted to mention something with the dividends and the whole tax-free. When you take this money out after you're 59 and a half, tax-free money. There's no better thing that I could think of than knowing that whatever money you put in and whatever growth you get out of it, you're never going to pay taxes on that money.
Yeah, man. And like you mentioned, that's why I think it's so good to have those, if you're a dividend investor or you like buying dividend stocks, the Roth IRA can be one of the greatest places you do that because all of those dividends that come in, you ain't paying tax on any of those suckers. That's one of the greatest parts about this account. And not only that, but like you said, the capital gains of it grows tax-free as well. And then another thing we didn't mention yet is one cool advantage. And Brad, I think you do this. Correct me if I'm wrong. But you can also use your Roth IRA as an emergency fund. Am I correct?
Yeah. So, it's a slightly controversial, I think, when people first hear it. But there's a little bit, and this is things that we want to clear up because there's a little bit of misconception here. So we know that with the Roth IRA, we hear that you are not allowed to take the money until you're 59 and a half. What that means is you are not allowed to take the growth and the dividends. You're not allowed to take that tax advantaged money until you're 59 and a half. But when you put money in, we call that a contribution. You are allowed to take your contributions back from your Roth IRA at any time, tax-free, penalty-free, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And for certain qualified expenses, you can even take some of those gains penalty-free and take taxes on them later in life. But yeah, I use it as an emergency fund because if I put $6,000 in on the first year, and now this is not my primary emergency fund. Like this would be like last resort. Brad's in a lot of trouble, but I can go in and get that $6,000 out and not pay any taxes on that. No, because I already paid taxes on it when it went in. Now the small caveat there is the max is $6,000 per year right now. If I were to take out previous years, like let's say I took out $15,000 worth of contributions, I have till the end of the year to pay that back, but I am only allowed to pay back up into what the max is for that year. So it's like, although it is a little bit of an emergency fund, I probably wouldn't take back more than I can put in. But yeah.
Let me ask you this then. If you don't pay yourself back by the end of that year, is that just a loss on your end on getting caught back up? Or do you have to, is there some sort of interest you got to pay on that or anything like that? I mean, what are we looking at here?
No. So I guess one of the there's really two cons that I can think of with the Roth IRA. And one of them is that the limit for some is pretty low. Like I would love for it to be a lot more money than that. And that's where other Roth options inside a Roth 401k or 403b could be a benefit. But the other is this time. It is fixed on time, and where I almost get into the position now where I used to be no investing while paying off debt, but now understanding compound interest and knowing that you have a fixed amount of time to put money into the Roth IRA every single year. And once that timer has stopped, you can't go back. So it's like you might want to even dabble a couple bucks. I'm not telling people how to invest, but knowing what I know now when I was paying off debt, probably would have threw some money into that Roth IRA. And I just did a video on it. What we need to know as well is right now it's pretty much New Year's Eve is tomorrow, I think. You have until tax day of the next year to max your Roth IRA out. So even though 2020 ends tomorrow, we have till April 15th, 2021 to max that out. But yeah, to answer your question, if I say it was December 18th and I needed $6,000 because my kid really wanted a Christmas present and I just broke down and gave it to him, and it got to April 15th of 2021 and I had not put that $6,000 in, I just lose that ability to put $6,000 into that Roth IRA for that year.
Got it. And I do think that is a good point to say, like, this is last resort, because when you pull that $6,000 out and you don't pay it back, that's $6,000 that could be compounding over 30 more additional years, which in that long of time frame with a good, decent interest rate, you're going to be missing out on a lot of money. That $6,000 could turn into six figures.
Yeah, no, and I've never gotten that far to need to dip into that because of what I mentioned before. Like, I still have my 3 to 6 months emergency fund in cash. But if I wanted to say dip that down to, like, maybe you have a really, really secure job and maybe you make a ton of money and maybe your emergency and you have low expenses in your emergency fund, you want to be 2 months. Well, then consider, you can at least consider in the back of your mind, if something really, really bad goes on here, I can fall back on that Roth IRA, which you cannot do with other types of retirement investments. It's just another pro of the Roth IRA. And when we talk about like opening them, you can do this with a number of different brokerages. We hear about all the big ones. I'm a fanboy of Vanguard. But I believe you're Fidelity. You've mixed in both Fidelity, Vanguard, but you can even do them with apps like M1 Finance. They're very, very easy to open up. And I think a really good point too that we need to make is if you're married, this is one of the few things that you can't do jointly either. So when I say it's a $6,000 limit, it's really a $12,000 family limit. And if you get a little bit older, you can catch up and things like that. But just because you have one, you have to open one for your spouse.
Absolutely agree. Now, let me ask you this then. You talked about like putting in just a lump sum at the beginning of the year or doing whatever. One, how do you invest in your Roth IRA? So are you lump summing at the beginning of the year? Do you do a $500 a month? And then once you do that, what are you putting that money into? Because I think we need to make it clear, sometimes people don't quite understand that you are investing inside something, or you're investing into something inside of your Roth IRA. So your Roth IRA is not the investment.
Yes.
It's the vehicle that holds your investment within that account. So once you put that $6,000 into your Roth, then you have to take it a next step and you have to go find something to invest in.
And I kind of like use the analogy. It's like an empty apartment. When you open a Roth IRA, you just bought an empty apartment. Then you need to put the couches in there, put the tables, put the decorations. Those are the investments that go inside. I've heard horror stories, and I love the Roth IRA, so I've made multiple videos about it. And one point that I always make is, I'll use Vanguard for an example. When you move money into Vanguard, they have like kind of like a settlement account. And the settlement account is where you move money before you move it into your investments. It's almost like having like a little savings account. Like while you're thinking about, where you're going to invest, or if you want to hold cash, like it's not a stock. It doesn't fluctuate. But the amount of people that I've heard, and it's terrible news, they're like, yeah, I put $6,000 in there. And then I realized 5 years later that I hadn't invested in anything. It hadn't grown at all. I think the settlement fund has like a 0.01% interest rate, and they go in and they have the same amount of money. So yeah, you make a great point. Once you buy that apartment and once you start moving stuff in, you need to place it inside investments. And I'll tell you, my strategy is I am always going to default to being a lump sum investor. Now, with other retirement accounts and things that come out over time, or if you're making paychecks and you're taking a portion of that paycheck and you're putting it into certain investments, yeah, that you're almost like dollar cost averaging by default. But if I have a lump sum of money, like if I have an inheritance or if I have $6,000 sitting around, I am always going to put that money in directly. I'm very, very for the lump sum. And the reason why, and I got this out of the Simple Path to Wealth, we know that the stock market trends to go up. So essentially, to me, when you dollar cost average, you're protecting against it going down. And if statistics show that it always goes up, why are you betting against it going down? Now, if you don't have money for the first of the year, that's fine. It doesn't make you dollar cost averaging if you don't have the money. Like before I was able to max on the first of the year, yeah, I put in the $125 a week to get to $6,000. That's what it works out to. And you could do that totally fine.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah.
I do $500 a month.
That's fine. And
Yep.
that's a different like just strategy. But for me,
Right.
I just happen to be a lump sum investor. And I also like the lump sum investing because it's a little bit out of sight, out of mind for me.
I like that about it too.
Yeah, I don't have to think about, did I get it in? Did I put February in? Are the markets up, down? I pretty much just put it in on the first of the year, and that's fine, and I don't have to worry about it. Now, for me, my Roth IRA is 100% VTSAX, which is the total stock market index fund. I don't put dividends in there, and that was mostly due to ignorance because I did not realize the full capabilities of that Roth. And years down the line, if I feel like I'm really going to grow a huge dividend portfolio, I might do that. And actually coming into this year, I might consider giving my wife, who's a little bit younger, a little bit more risk tolerance. I might throw some individual stocks in hers. But for me at 40 years old and kind of getting ready, I know it's 19 years away, but getting ready to get those out, I've had great success with VTSAX. And it's kind of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And you do get a small dividend payout from VTSAX still, which is good. So you're still getting a little bit of.
I think it pays like 2 and change, but yeah, no, like I'm also a huge fan of Realty Income, which is a REIT, and REITs your tax on those dividends is ordinary income. So a lot of people like these REITs inside Roth IRAs, and I'm like, yeah, that would probably be the most tax efficient place for them. But I'd rather pay taxes on my brokerage accounts, which people know come far down my list of priorities. I want to make sure that my foundation, my bread and butter, the thing that at the end of the day I'm going to stand on top of, even if it's not going to get me the most like crazy growth. I'm never going to be sitting at a party drinking beers, talking about how VTSAX is skying to the moon right now. That's never going to happen.
No.
But I think it's pretty safe to say that at the water cooler or having a beer 40 years from now, 30 years from now, I will have done just fine with the VTSAX.
I 100% agree with that, man. So my wife and I have our own separate Roth IRAs, and it's funny how it ended up working out. So to be honest, I handle all of our finances. My wife, she has a understanding of what's going on and kind of what we have, but like when it comes to the nitty gritty details, I am in charge of everything. So it just kind of happened like this. I think it's because my Roth IRA has been open for so long and it's always been in VTSAX. That's 100% VTSAX is my Roth IRA. But then when we opened up hers, I've been doing dividend stocks in her Roth IRA.
Yeah.
And it's because I've also gained a lot. I'm a lot more knowledgeable in the stock market for getting single stocks. And I know like she won't have a very diverse portfolio, which maybe some people are yelling at me right now at the speakers hearing that, but it's because I feel very well about these companies she's investing in that I'm willing to be a little more risky in her portfolio because I have faith in these companies and I follow these companies very closely.
It's crazy that we both kind of like use our wives as experimental.
I know. I was thinking the same thing.
My account's fine. Let's just mess with my wife.
If we happen to get a divorce,
No, but I'm Irish Catholic. We're not allowed to get a divorce. I'll sleep in a separate bedroom. But the main thing, it's not that we're experimenting or we're more risky with our wives. I think
right.
I can sleep at night doing that because I know that I have myself set up so well that even if experimenting or adding some dividend stocks, which may not grow as much, that might be a little more volatile, hers is like going to be the vacation money at the end of the day. Like that retirement account's like, I'm going to make sure that I can take care of her financially with the things that I've set up and the core values that I have for investing. And who knows? Like I threw a little bit of Apple, a little bit of this, a little bit of that in hers. We might be saying in a couple of years, like, oh, look at boring Brad with his VTSAX. If he would have continued, if he would have done what he did for Tara, he'd be, now we're talking multi-millions instead of millionaire, because this is a tax-free millionaire. That's the video you see on YouTube, the Roth IRA, tax-free millionaire.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also important to note that we are both firm. I think I can say this about you. We're both firm believers in like what's their money is our money, what our money is their money with our spouses. I mean, there's no JJ money and Brad's money. There's no Tara money and Lindsay money. You know, it's all of ours together. I mean, hell, I'll even share my money with you, Brad, if you... No, I'm totally kidding. I mean, practically we are in a relationship with this damn podcast. So...
and if we buy a house together, that's pretty much...
That's a whole nother... Yeah,
we would have to get a minister there to ordain that purchase of that house. I want to talk about something that I made a post on my Instagram the other day, and I took a poll and said, did you invest in a Roth IRA this year? And then the follow-up slide was, if you answered no, could you tell me why? And I'll tell you, there was pretty much two major things that came up that I want to talk about. The first was, I'm only 16. I'm only 18. So we have the age. Age was definitely one of them. The other one was income. And I kind of want to talk about both of those right off the bat. There is no age requirement or there's no age limitations when it comes to the Roth IRA. Here is the only limitation, whether you are 1 day old or 100 days old. You have to have earned income. And what do I mean by earned income? I mean that if you work on the books, which is the only legal way to work, if you work on the books and you have a tax return and you pay the IRS federal or state taxes, you have earned income. So if you have any sort of earned income, you are allowed to invest in your Roth IRA up until your earned income, up until $6,000. So for example, if you are a 17-year-old high school student and you're working at Ralph's Italian Ices and you made $1,000 this summer, you are allowed to invest $1,000 into your Roth IRA. Now, my students would be like, Finn, I'm not going to keep all of my money in Roth IRAs. I mean, I'm not going to put all my money there. I want to spend a little. Well, I said this. Well, the unfortunate thing about Roth IRAs is you can't put birthday money in there and things like that and money from your parents. But one thing my parents did with me was if I made $1,000, they would match me. So I get to spend $500 and then they would give me $500 to put in my Roth IRA. The government doesn't ask where the money came from to go into the Roth IRA. They just know that you had to have had that amount of earned income. So I said, and it made people crazy, that my 2-year-old, actually she's going to be 3 next month, my 3-year-old has a Roth IRA, and so does my 1-year-old. They're like, how the hell do they have earned income? Well, they work for my side businesses. They work for this YouTube channel. Avery helps tidy up the studio, and I pay her a reasonable wage to do so. She's not making $6,000 a year, but she makes $500 a year, like helping me pick out what shirt. Avery, should I wear this shirt for the video today or this one? Wear that one, Daddy. Or Avery, which thumbnail do you like better? Would you like to watch this show or that show? Because I realize that could be a business for her, because when she watches YouTube, like she looks at the thumbnails. Like, I want to watch that cartoon. So like she does things like that, and baby modeling and things like that Brody can do, like taking a picture of them and throwing them up on the blog. So it doesn't matter if you're a day old or 100 days old. All you need is earned income. And that's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. And the other one is I make too much money. So I want to talk briefly. There is income limits. You can only invest in your Roth IRA up to a certain amount of income. Now, if you are single, it's $139,000 as of the time of this recording, and it's $206,000 if you are married. Now, there's other ones like married filing separately and things like that, and you could do your own research, but there are income limits. But I'll tell you this, I'm over the income limit for the Roth IRA. There are legal loopholes to get money into the Roth IRA. And the main one is the Backdoor Roth. We've heard everyone talk about it from Dave Ramsey, and it sounds so sketchy, the Backdoor Roth. But it's a legal loophole where essentially you just put money into a traditional IRA, which does not have any income limits, and then you roll that in to the Roth IRA. Now, the major thing that we think about there is now it's not a contribution, now it's a conversion. So you have to wait 5 years, then it becomes a contribution. So with that taking money out emergency fund thing, if you were to do this, you'd have to wait 5 years. So for me, I just have to do a backdoor Roth. But even though I make more than $206,000 a year married filing jointly, I'm still investing in my Roth IRA.
That backdoor Roth sounds kind of nasty, Brad.
Oh, it's not as nasty as the Roth conversion ladder.
Oh, God, you're right on that.
The Roth train, whatever. No, but it's so true. The amount of people that are, they just know there's an income limit, and then the buck stops there for them. They're like,
Yes.
oh, I make too much money. All right, I'm screwed. And we're like, and I think the kid thing is because to open a Robinhood account, like all my kids want to do this because, Robinhood gamifies it and everything like that. They're always like, oh, you need to be 18. Well, yeah, you need to be 18 to have a taxable brokerage account, but you don't need one for a Roth IRA if you have earned income.
Yeah, no, I think that's great to know. And those are two solid big points of the Roth that a lot of people don't know about or just, don't ever find out about. And basically, I would recommend if you're a young teenager, which first, if you're listening to this podcast, freaking props to you, my guy.
You're a millionaire.
Well, yeah,
maybe not yet, but you are a millionaire.
No doubt. But if you're working at the local grocery store or whatever, you got to be putting some money in that Roth if you can afford it. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I understand it's tight when you're a teenager. You got bills and you want to have a social life or whatnot. But if you take just go search on the internet right now. Go to Google and search compound interest calculator and just mess around with that. I know there's one on MoneyChimp.com.
Yeah, that's my favorite one too, yeah.
Yeah, you just plug in and you can see okay, if I put $100 in a month for the next 40 years with an average interest return of let's say 8% in the market, it's amazing what that can turn into. We're talking million plus dollars that this Roth IRA could be if you start young enough. It's definitely a very powerful vehicle that I think every single person, if they can, should be taking advantage of it.
And this is what I was getting back to. Just because you're not maxing it, to even do that compound interest calculator with $100. Now, granted, are you going to be a millionaire with $100 a year? No, but you're going to make more money over time. And I want to touch upon the last common thing that I got was mostly just not knowing how to do it. And that's kind of why I make those videos and we're having this podcast and things like that. But guys, don't be intimidated to learn, especially when it comes to finances. Call Vanguard up. They want you to succeed. Call Fidelity up. They want you to succeed. They'll give you all the things that you need to know. Maybe you don't trust the average guys, but call them. They're going to help you because one of the common answers was, I have no idea what to invest in. And that's where we get into the index funds, and that's fine. But there are simple, very manageable things for you to do that you're not going to get screwed over. There's this stigma. And the other way to fight this stigma is to talk to people about money. That's what this podcast, I think, at its core, not just this episode, but money is not taboo. If you are of adult age and you don't know what a Roth IRA is yet, and this is completely foreign to you, I just beg you, ask your father-in-law, ask your mother, ask your father, your mother, your best friend, hey, just for S's and G's, do you have a Roth IRA? Mm-hmm. And with that same thing, if you're adult age, it's not too late. It's not too late. Some people are I'm 55 years old. I'm like, so? 55 years old. And also you can max out. There's a higher limit that you can put into if you're above a certain age. So I don't know off the top of my head what that is, but I believe it's $6,500 if you're at an age of 55 or older. Yeah, they call it.
We'd have to look it up.
Yeah, they call it the catch up.
Yeah, I quickly did. I wanted to run through one scenario to get back to that point of the compound interest calculator.
Yeah.
If you did the $100 a month, like we mentioned earlier, so let's assume a 20-year-old, he's either out of college or he's working at working as a carpenter or a plumber, or doing something. You got $100 to put into a Roth. If you don't, you got to make some life changes. But let's say this.
Get him, JJ.
If you got $100 to put in and you're at the age of 20 years old and you do this consistently for 45 years, so that puts you at 65 years old when you start pulling this money out. Now let's use Dave Ramsey's interest rate, the magic 12% on an annual basis. That gives you a future value of $1.825 million for just putting $100 in every single month and never raising it. That's assuming you'll never get another raise, you'll never make any more money in your life, which is probably not true whatsoever, because I know most 20-year-olds are not making as much as they made when they were 30 years old and 40 years old. So that's not even raising that limit up at all. So if you raise it to 6,000 when you turn like 25, that number just keeps getting higher. So let's back it down a little bit, and let's go to the typical like 8%.
Yeah, 8%. I like that.
$500,000.
And how much?
Dude, come on.
How much would you have put in? Does it say how much you invested? So like you have $500,000. Does it say how much you put in?
That's starting at zero.
Okay.
So like my current principal that's starting from my first $100 that I put in there at age 20. Is that your question?
Yeah. Like how much of that is growth? That $500,000.
54,000.
54,000 turned into $500,000.
Correct.
That's
insane.
That's what's astonishing to me. Like, because it could sound like $500,000. You're like, all right, well, how much did I put in? You put in 1/10 of that.
It's nuts.
And it's like, this goes back to that, like, if I would have known at 20 years old what I know now. Listen.
I know.
I'll give a shout out to Frank that we butchered his last name a bunch of months ago. Frank is 19 years old. He's a guaranteed millionaire if he can find $100 a month.
Legend.
He's a guaranteed millionaire. That's if he never does a growth portfolio, never F's with Tesla. If he just goes $100 into VTSAX, that dude is a guaranteed millionaire at 65.
Wow. You can't beat it, man. That's why the Roth IRA is the greatest single investment vehicle in our opinion.
Yeah, and as we'll talk about now, like as we're getting older, some other like awesome things that I'm excited about, even more as far as like the money and why I really do take this seriously, like all jokes aside, besides it being tax free. If you didn't know this, like your Roth, your 401k, your 403b has something called a required minimum distribution, meaning when you turn 70 and a half years old, you are required to start taking money out of those tax deferred accounts. Essentially, you can't just let it grow forever and never pay taxes on it. Like that's not allowed. You have to start taking money out and paying taxes on that tax deferred money. With this, because it's all tax free and because they already know you pay taxes on it, there is no required minimum distributions. You are literally can just let this grow for, like, let's say you are living off your pension and you're living off your other things that do have required minimum distributions, like your 401k or just passive income. You can literally never touch this. And here's why I'm saying, why would you never want to touch it? With the Roth IRA, if you have a spouse, and there's some other rules if you don't have a spouse, but hopefully all of you will have one or two or many. If you have a spouse, and listen to me good, when you die, that Roth IRA becomes theirs. It is theirs. And there's no required minimum distributions for them either. And they can take that money out if they're over 59 and a half, tax-free, penalty-free, like it's theirs. This is one of those things where you can create generations worth of wealth and never pay tax on that money. And this is amazing too, because if I've been doing my Roth IRA since I was 16 years old, I didn't meet my wife till I was in my 30s. But when I die, she's going to get all that tax-free growth, and it's tax-free for her too. Like to me, it almost doesn't make sense. And having two parents that have passed away and inheritance monies and things like this and things like that, the fact of knowing that I could die and give money to my spouse that is going to be tax-free and penalty-free for her as well, that she can use whenever she wants once she's over 59 and a half. I don't know, man. It just blows my freaking mind.
Another reason why the Roth IRA is one of the best investment vehicles to make in 2021.
Is it? I mean,
it's.
Is there something really, really bad we can like? What? I can't.
That's a great question.
Like, tell me your biggest con. We talked about the cons of like all right, I want to put 10 in, not 6. And the con of,
I mean, honestly, the biggest con I can think of is that you can't pull all of the money out before 59 and a half without a penalty.
yeah, but
I mean, that's like,
you could still get penalized. Yeah, if you like really wanted it, I guess you could pay the penalty, which is going to
Right.
slap you in the face. But
I'm just trying to think of cons here, but I really can't think of one. I mean, a bad one to say like, hey, maybe wouldn't invest in a Roth IRA. You know what I mean? Like, no, I don't have one, man. Do you?
no, like you mentioned, like there might be circumstances that you might invest somewhere else first.
Yeah. Or at the same time, you know.
Yeah, like you said, you had that company match and you want that might be your priority number one. And like for me, I have like my order of investments that I attack. And that's just mostly because I'm like a little OCD on it. But dude, like we mentioned, you would have to fight really, really hard to get me to not want to do it. Because it can be used like, even if you're like a stock guru and you're like, I only invest in Tesla. All right, well, you can put $6,000 of Tesla into your Roth IRA. You know, like.
Yeah, no, it's true. So the I guess one other thing I was thinking of as I was like, I'm really trying to think of cons here, but like maybe for the FIRE movement. So like the FIRE movement, let's say you're investing in you're putting a dividend portfolio together because you want to live off your dividends to retire early. If you do that in a Roth IRA and you're banking on living off dividends, you're going to have to not only pay tax on that if you pull it out before 59 and a half, but you also got to pay the 10% penalty to be able to live, or your financial independence dreams go bye-bye.
So you're saying, all right, no, actually, so you're saying liquidity.
Yeah, like being able to access the money to live off of if you wanted to before the like typical retirement age.
Because I think it's safe to say, JJ, we just mentioned it a minute ago with Frank, like if you're 20, 23, 24 years old and you have your money in mind and you're doing the right things, you are going to be set with money and ready to, quote, retire way before 59 and a half is what you're saying.
Correct.
I guess that makes sense 100% to me. I think the only thing that I might say to that is that if you're doing all of these things right, then $6,000 isn't really going to be that much money. And do it for your spouse when you die. Like there's definitely that liquidity issue. Yes. If you put $6,000 a year into a taxable brokerage account, and at 40, you wanted to start living off those dividends, and but I mean, to play devil's advocate there, that's where we fight that with diversification, right? That's where we fight it with passive income, and we fight it with real estate investments and taxable accounts, as well as retirements and pensions. But I guess maybe like, liquidity, that could be a con.
That's just the best thing I could come up with as I'm thinking on the spot here.
If that's the worst thing about it, I wish I would have screenshot some of the other things that people said, the reasons why, but that was really it. And we definitely didn't want to talk about like things to invest in. That's not what this episode's about. Like if you're tickled by this and you're ready to go do it, like I said, the best place to start is start with one of the bigger companies. Is your Roth with Vanguard or are you with Fidelity with them?
No, all my retirement stuff is with Vanguard.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a Vanguard fanboy too, and that's a great place.
Which there's nothing wrong with Fidelity.
No.
You know, they have the same thing Vanguard offers. It's just Vanguard was the first one I stumbled upon.
It's like, are you a Glock guy or are you a SIG guy? It doesn't
absolutely.
Once you pull the trigger, it doesn't really matter that much. And I just got into Vanguard because when I was doing my research, that's what kept popping up. And the founder, Jack Bogle, he created the index fund, and I knew that I was going to be doing it with VTSAX. So I think I just stumbled upon Vanguard. But I have a buddy that works for Fidelity. He's always really mad at me with that. I never went with him, but I was like, I opened it before you started working there, bud. Sorry.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, and I guess we can close this out. If like, say you had your Roth IRA with Vanguard and you hated Vanguard, like something happened, like Vanguard came to your door, you can open next year's Roth IRA with Fidelity. Like you're not fixed into that. Your Roth IRA inside Vanguard would just grow and do whatever it is, and you never have to touch it and see it again until you're 59 and a half where you die. But like, it's not fixed. Like this decision-making process, if you were going out and you're like, all right, it's January 1st, 2021, I'm going to open it up with M1 Finance because I have the app and I see that it allows me to do the Roth IRA or with Webull or whatever. And then you decide like a year down the road, like I want it with a more reputable company. You didn't do anything wrong. Like nothing is quote set in stone.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you can also transfer those accounts too, like if you open up that Roth for, let's say, 2021 and you're like, well, I feel like going with Fidelity now and you hate Vanguard, then you can transfer your Roth IRA from Vanguard into your new Roth IRA account with Fidelity.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree, man. That again, like, and I know we're wrapping this up here, but if somebody would ask me, where's like the first place I should go invest? Most people think like, should I go open up my Robinhood account? No, you need to go open up a Roth IRA.
Yes.
If there's one thing you guys can get out of this episode, is I think the Roth IRA is probably the best vehicle somebody could, or excuse me, the best account someone can go open up and start investing in.
Yeah, like if you're back to that 18 to 25-year-old, I'll be the first one to tell you that it's not sexy and you're not going to get clout with your friends. You're not. Like, yeah, going to the party and talking about your options trades is going to be way cooler and get chicks when you're 18 to 25 years old. I know, but take it from a dude that's going to be 39 in 2 months and from a dude that's retired at 30. Well, you're 29. So take it from a guy that's retired at 29 and Brad.
I'm not retired. I wish I was retired.
Take it from a guy that works for himself at 29 years old and quit his W-2 job, and take it from a guy that's going to be 39. Defer that short-term gratification. I just beg you, because you'll have time in your later years to YOLO it out a little bit, and you'll be able to YOLO with money that doesn't really matter. The money right now that you're making at 18, especially with this compound interest, that does matter. And I'm not trying to preach on anybody or tell them what to do. Listen, if you want to go freaking sell options at 18 years old, that's great. But I can promise you a lot of the cool things I did when I was 18, like go 150 miles an hour on a motorcycle, are not cool to me anymore. And I wish I never did them. Or going to spring breaks and drinking my face off for 8 days straight sounded really cool then. It's not that cool now. And investing in a Roth IRA is definitely not good.
You sound like such a loser.
Oh, dude. It's like, yeah, you're saying,
but no, seriously though,
you're saying to yourself, what's next, Brad? You're going to ask me to pick up chicks with magic? Like, I get it. I get it. I get it. I'm with you, but please, like, you're
man.
like max that Roth IRA out and don't tell your friends, and then YOLO with like a little bit of money. Like, I'm not saying you.
But don't get me wrong. You enjoy the 8 days of on the beach pounding beers.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah. But
I'll tell you what, when we go to Asheville and we get 100K downloads, you bet your sweet ass I'm gonna be pounding some beers in Asheville. And whoever's out there with us, we're gonna be pounding them together.
And JJ, you got anything to say before I sign us off here?
I just want to say that, Brad, you're awesome, dude. I got nothing, to be honest.
Speaking of got nothing, you got nothing. We like to read a review.
Boom.
But the review,
we ain't got nothing.
We do not have any new reviews to read. So please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review so we can read your name on here. And did I tell you, Big Ball Boy or whatever his name was reached out to me, Eric? He's like, I'm Big Ball Boy. I was like, that's hilarious. Thank you so much.
That was pretty funny.
All right, guys. Happy New Year. It is 2021. Open that Roth IRA. Trust me, we'll talk about the sexy YOLO things that you can pick chicks up with as well. But for now, max out that Roth IRA. Please, I beg you, get down in the Facebook group. Let us know what your plan is. Are you a dollar cost averager? Have you already done it when this comes out? Mine will already be max for 2021. Or are you trying to do that as well? Is this going to be the first year that you max? I know Q makes it happen. He's maxing his out for his first time in 2020. Maybe 2021 is going to be the first time you max it. Let's get the community going. Let's rally people together and let's see how many people we can max this Roth IRA out this year and for all the years to follow. Guys, until we catch you on the next one. Cheers.